This morning there's exciting news. They're telling us that we're going back to the moon. But listen carefully how they're saying it. We're told that humanity is going back to the moon for the first time in 50 years, which in per se, that kind of shocked me. I'm like, wow, 50 years? Why so long? But then upon closer inspection, that's not what they're saying. They're not saying they're going back to the moon. They're saying, and listen carefully to the exact words, we're going to the closest we've been in 50 years. That wording matters, and it was kind of sus for me. So I'm like, let's dig into it. Because if we truly went to the moon in the 1960s and 70s, the closest technically shouldn't even be like a word, like a phrase in the conversation. You don't say closest unless you're avoiding something. So the real question isn't, are we going back? The real question is, why aren't they going back to the moon instead of going the closest we've ever been in 50 years? The question rises spontaneously. Why haven't we gone back in 50 years? Isn't that weird? It's not just America. It's everyone. After the Apollo missions, something unpredicted happened. Everyone stopped wanting to go to the moon. The United States didn't go back. The Soviet didn't go back. Russia didn't go back. China didn't go back. Europe didn't go. Not once. Any of these countries went back to the moon in 50 years. You're going to agree with me that that silence isn't normal. The moon is the most strategic piece of real estate in the entire Earth space, right? High ground and permanent orbit. Like an observation platform. You're telling me that no one in the world wanted that advantage? To me, it doesn't sound like a disinterest. It's more like a constraint. Example, somebody won't allow you to because they don't want you to. Who is this somebody? This is a question that never went away. Why didn't we go back? Everyone has debated the moon landing to the point that on social media, you know what they say. The lighting's weird, the shadows are weird, the wind, there's wind, there's no wind. Just they say that it was the first steps on the moon, but the camera was already outside of the craft. So who was recording you if those are the first? Just a whole bunch of things. But here's the thing that most people don't consider. If something unexpected happened on the moon, controlling the narrative afterwards would be essential. Maybe the truth is something governments can't admit to you. Maybe it would reveal who's actually in charge. Do you guys remember Obama in that interview years ago where jokingly, when he was asked about extraterrestrials, he said, oh, those ETs, they won't allow us. They won't allow us to talk about it. He said it kidding around, but who else got the vibe that it was kind of truthful? So what if someone on the moon told us to leave? So get this, there's this long-standing account. It's been circulating for decades since it happened. Basically, the astronauts that were on board saw angels that telepathically told them, what are you doing here? This is not your time. You shouldn't be here. They called it a collective hallucination. But now we could consider those angels like a presence, a technology, an authority, all of the above. The message was simple. This isn't your place, and it's not your time. Go back to where you came from. Now, regardless if it's technological, spiritual, whatever it was, the point is, we never went back. So to me, this would make perfect sense on why we haven't gone back in over 50 years and why they're only going the closest now. So what if the moon was some kind of alien base? Remember when we launched a missile at the moon and it rang like a bell for hours? This is what actually happened. It is not speculation. You can Google it, ask your ChatGPT. It's part of the Apollo era experiments. Now, the official reason was seismic testing. They placed seismometers on the moon's surface. They slammed spent rocket stages into it to study how vibrations traveled. I don't know. In other words, they were trying to understand the moon's internal structure. That alone is interesting because you don't worry about internal structures unless something's interesting, right? The moon ringing like a bell is certainly very interesting now. When the objects hit the moon, scientists expected vibrations to dissipate, but they didn't. The moon rang for hours. NASA itself used the words, "it rang like a bell." And that's not how solid rocks, dead rocks, behave. It's actually how a hollow structure would behave. So this raises the uncomfortable question. What exactly are we standing on if or when we went to the moon? If we look into ancient history, it does give you answers that modern science does not. Even ancient Indian traditions describe a time when Earth had no moon. Then there's a time where Earth had 2 moons. This also I found in Sumerian texts. And finally, both stories in synchronicity had a final 1 moon. No moon, 2 moon, 1 moon now. So across cultures, there's a cross-reference. Basically, this is the sky history, right? It suggests that there was placement, adjustment, and corrections. Exactly what you would expect from an advanced civilization that was managing Earth as a system, just like in the Anunnaki tablets. So enter the Anunnaki, the Watchers. According to the Anunnaki, the Earth was never left alone. It has been monitored, managed, and observed. As I've said multiple times, the Anunnaki were not gods. They were extraterrestrial beings whose technology appeared godlike. And the fact that they also created Homo sapiens sapien from a bipedal hominid, hence why we have that missing link of millennia between a walking monkey and us, all pretty without hair and tails. So back to the Anunnaki, they require infrastructure if they have to observe and monitor us, right? Which brings me back to the moon. The moon, the Black Knight satellite, and 3i Atlas. What do all of these things have in common? They are all the same kind of object. Look at the pattern. The Black Knight satellite is this object that orbits the Earth. No nations claim to have ever launched it. No one knows where it came from. But guess what it looks like? It looks like a rock. It looks like a meteorite, but it acts like a satellite, one of our satellites, but it's a rock. Now, this is the connection that I personally made, and I believe that the Black Knight satellite is the eye of Enlil, the eye with which he would look and see everything. You know, how they say God sees everything, who is God of the later religions. Enlil and Enki, but in this case we're just going to focus on Enlil. That was the sky god. In this case, the Black Knight satellite would be his satellite, his watcher, his sentinel. Oh, and it's still functioning now. So now let's look at the 3i Atlas and the coincidences. It's another object that looks like a rock, a comet, a meteorite, but it behaves oddly. It takes turns, it does angles, it deliberately appears to be doing maneuvers. It doesn't act like a meteorite that will hurl in one direction and hit when it finds an obstacle. So now let's look at the moon again, keeping 3i Atlas in mind. It's a perfect rock, placed perfectly in orbit. It has an unusual density, it rings like a bell, controls tides, tilt, cycles, and biology. So what if all of these things aren't different things? They're just different types of the same technology, disguised as nature. I mean, if we take into consideration the Death Star, the comparison isn't even laughable. The Death Star in Star Wars looks like the moon. Not in the sense that it's a weapon. I mean, could be in sci-fi fiction or conspiracy world. It's more about disguising technology as a celestial body. Wouldn't that be the smartest way to hide it? Right? You would never know that it's there observing you because you think it's a celestial body. I don't think the moon is a weapon. I personally think it looks more like a surveillance platform. I don't know, where they have meetings like the UN, but the UN has meetings with the leaders of the Earth. What if the moon is where they meet up to do the meetings of planets of worlds? So if the moon would one day end up to be artificial, that would make sense why we're not allowed up there. It would explain why no one went back. It would explain why now they're cautious and they're going the closest to the moon that they have in 50 years. And this is why their language is also carefully chosen.